Pending question is not called. No. Delegate from Norfolk, Delegate Lindsey.
Madam Speaker, speaking to the bill.
Delegate Lindsey, you have the floor.
I'm not so naive as to believe that my words will change the mind of anyone who is here ready to cast their vote. I understand and appreciate that we all get here by different paths, and we all process things in different ways. And we associate our choices with our values, our philosophies, many times our religion, and the way we're reared. And I understand and appreciate that a lot of times the devil is in the details. And when I look at this particular bill, what I think has been masterful about the way it has been portrayed is it has been categorized as nonpartisan redistricting. In point of fact, it is anything but. It is a situation where we're seeking to enshrine in the Constitution that 2 people out of 8 who are appointed to this process, whether they're Republican, whether they're Democrat, can affect a situation where this matter will automatically have to go to the Supreme Court. Now, I know that there are those of us who have a great deal of confidence in the Supreme Court, most of whom are not lawyers, and so they assume that the Supreme Court is the ultimate venue where justice is discharged. While I don't take issue with the ideal, I also understand that the Supreme Courts are not gods. The justices of the Supreme Court are not gods. They're individuals. They also, like us, come from backgrounds, come from philosophies, come from training, beliefs, the like. One of my favorite sayings from a movie I once watched was that the greatest thing the devil ever accomplished was convincing man that he did not exist. Well, the greatest challenge, and I'm going to just change that around a little bit because I'm not very imaginative. One of the greatest challenges that has been overcome with this bill is the bill of goods that's being sold is in telling folk that this bill solves the issue of partisanship in politics, and it solves the issue of making sure that the electorate affects their leaders as opposed to their leaders affecting the choice of the electorate. I can tell you this bill does not accomplish that. This bill is going to create a situation for years and eons to come where factions of politicians are going to continue to be political, all in the name of democracy, while at the same time being able to engage in the protection of self-interest. This is a bill where you have where 2 people can affect the overall will of 6 others. I just can't think of many situations where that is the default position. This is a bill that is going to leave the backdrop as the Supreme Court. And one thing I'll say is that I have lived with this bill, this legislature, this session, and the whole ideal of nonpartisan redistricting has been more a part of my life than I would ever hope it to be. I am probably going to be as happy as anyone here when the votes are cast today. But I'm not disillusioned in believing that that resolves the issue. That just means that that's the start of the fight to come. Because this bill, if it passes, does not satisfy what we claim and profess we're up to. What it does is gives us the opportunity to hide behind a process and claim we did our jobs. And in such, this bill is lacking. Thank you.
The delegate from Manassas, Delegate Carter.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Speaking to the resolution.
Delegate Carter, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. One of the hardest things to understand is your own biases. We all come with them. They're built into our minds. We can work to be better the next day than we were the last, but it's work. And one of the biases that I constantly work on is trying to hear the words that come from black thoughts. Hear the words that are spoken in black voices. And I am going to stand up here now and attempt to use my white voice to air the words of black thoughts. There's a few quotes that I'd like to share with the body. Number one, if you're not careful, the newspapers will have you hating the people who are being oppressed and loving the people who are doing the oppressing. Delegate Price has spoken quite often about the way that this has been covered in the press, about the way that the newspapers have talked about this. And those words have been hard to hear for a lot of us, sometimes including me. But she has spoken about how the newspaper is covering this as a need to do something. But this is a way by which oppression can manifest itself in our redistricting. Madam Speaker, I have heard Delegate Price's words. Another quote: the most disrespected person in America is the black woman. The most unprotected person in America is the black woman. The most neglected person in America is the black woman. Madam Speaker, I hear the voices of the women in the Black Caucus who are telling me that this is not the way to protect the rights of minorities to have their voices heard in our Commonwealth. I hear that. And now I'm standing here repeating that, hoping that some of my friends in this body can hear those words in my white man's voice when they could not hear them in the voice of a black woman. And Madam Speaker, the third quote that I'd like to share with the body, and these were all from Malcolm X. The third quote that I would like to share with the body: if you stick a knife in my back 9 inches and pull it out 6, there's no progress. If you pull it out all the way, that's not progress. Progress is healing the wound that the blow made. And they haven't even pulled the knife out, much less healed the wound. They won't admit the knife is there. Madam Speaker, I'm standing here admitting that last year I helped put that knife in the back of my colleagues in the Black Caucus. And I am standing here hoping that the members of this body will help me try to heal that wound. Don't just pull the knife out 6 inches. Don't just pull the knife out and walk away. Madam Speaker, we've got to pull that knife out, and we have got to heal the wound. I hope that we will reject this resolution. Thank you.
The delegate from Richmond City, Delegate Bourne.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, speaking to the measure.
Delegate Bourne, you have the floor.
Madam Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the House, I, like all of us, have heard the profound and poetic, the powerful opposition that has come from many of the people that I serve with in the Black Caucus. And as we have considered this measure, this issue, we've heard about all the flaws, all the problems, all the shortcomings with SJ 18. And so as the session has gone on, I've said to myself, how did we get here? All of my colleagues are generally reasonable people. They're smart, they're good. They had to be, because they got here. We just don't get to the General Assembly by happenstance. And as I began to think how we got here, a word, a very instructive word came to me: gaslighting. For those of you that don't know what gaslighting is a tactic in which a person or an entity, in order to gain more power, makes us question our reality. And you might say, well, how does that happen? We hear that it's nonpartisan or nonpartisan independent redistricting. Well, I think clearly the text of the amendment says it's not. We have legislators on there. There's no consideration for black people or communities of color. Two people can thwart the whole process. But you ask folks about this, they deny they ever say these things, even though you've got proof. How else do we get gaslighted? Well, the people who are doing the gaslighting, they use the things that are nearest and dearest to you as ammunition. So, Madam Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the House, I would suggest that when we pass this the first time, when this deal was concocted, might I add, and if I'm wrong, I'm sure somebody will correct me, there was not one person of color in the group that concocted this. There was not one woman in the room. And for those who are advocating this, to expect us to believe that you have all Virginians in your heart and your mind and in this flawed amendment, miss me with that. But you know what? You know what a good gaslighter does? They wear you down over time. And we have been worn down. Here's the interesting thing. And here is what I believe is at the crux of our concern and our opposition to this. We have heard over and over again, we're going to address communities of color. We're going to address this. We're going to address that through this or that, and this is how, trust us. But you know what? You know what the members of the Black Caucus know? Do you know what drives and what brings about the passion that you hear in Black History Month and on other issues that are important of community colors from my mentors, Delegates Ward and Tyler and McQuinn, who have seen and experienced unthinkable things that a man of 43 years, fortunately, has not experienced. They know, we know, their actions don't match their words. But because they're good at what they do, they throw in positive reinforcement to confuse us, because they know confusion weakens people. They try to align people against you. Madam Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the House, one of the things that I agree with Delegate Miari is when he said, being a dad is more important than anything we'll do here. And I could not agree more. And Madam Speaker, there is one instance where I have absolutely felt bad about not being here. And that's when we took the vote on this the first time. But because I agree with Delegate Miari's, I was with my daughter at a daddy-daughter dance. And I know that not only was that the right thing to do, but opposing this amendment is the right thing to do. I'm always going to be able to look her in the eye and say that. But over the last year, despite whatever season it was, I have felt condensation on my intelligence. Madam Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the House, it wasn't rain. So, Madam Speaker, as we are very shortly past the 55th anniversary of Bloody Sunday, where our forebears were bruised, they were bloodied, they were beaten, all for fighting for what they knew was right. And that's what we're doing here today. That's why enshrining the ability of people of color, black people, in our ability to draw the districts is so critically important, because our 400-year history is replete with our voices being silenced, not heard, or just outright ignored. That's what's driving us. And so, Madam Speaker, if my votes over the last hour cause me not to be back here, then so be it. Because I will walk for the rest of my life with my head held high, knowing that I did the right thing. So, Madam Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the House, let's acknowledge and appreciate what's going on and what we are about to do. We are about to enshrine in our Constitution an amendment that has been described on this floor as piss poor. I think my friend was being polite. Madam Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the House, I urge you, I implore you, hear our voices. Hear our voices. Please, do what's right and not what's easy. Vote no. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The delegate from Enrico, Delegate Bagby.
Madam Speaker, I only talk when I think people are listening. I've observed this room, and people aren't listening. I looked at the individuals on this side of the aisle when Delegate Price was talking. And those individuals that voted with the Republicans were on their phones. I only try to talk when people are listening. It's painful to see my colleagues speak with so much passion about a single issue and no one's listening. We started this, and I oftentimes speak in game, sports analogies. We started down a few points in our argument this year. A lot of my friends on this side of the aisle came on board. I oftentimes like to observe, listen. As my friend from Norfolk said the other day, don't talk much on the floor. Probably because most of the time when I talk on the floor, it's because it's something I feel so passionate about. But my friend from Henrico, my colleague from Henrico, mentioned why he ran, to make a difference. And he talked about the gentleman that served before him. I would ask him, how would that gentleman vote today? What is the difference between your vote and his vote? I love me some Whitney Houston. And she has a song, How Will I Know? The only way I will know if you really love me is by your vote. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The delegate from Prince William, Delegate Orion.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I have a thought that I want to share that hopefully can put some things in perspective and why those of us who are members of the Virginia Legislative Black Caucus feel so passionate about this. It is not, from my perspective, to put down or to degrade anyone, but it is to express a perspective that I think we live with every day that might not be understood by some. A dear friend of mine a couple of weeks ago was here in Richmond, and he was standing before the courts committee. He was up for a circuit court judgeship, and he gave a very passionate presentation of why he wanted to serve on the circuit court. And then he closed with these words, and they're quite penetrating, and they bespeak the passion that you hear us speak of because they are so real. And I say, and I quote his words very respectfully to all of us. He said that white Americans wake up each day expecting the American dream to work for them. He went on to say, black Americans wake up each day hoping we get access to the American dream. There's an enormous bridge between expectation and hope. That is some of what is being captured. Whenever there's a degree of legislation that is passed, you wonder whether it's taken away your hope to become, to be, to give expression. And legislation like this dims the hope.
The delegate from Portsmouth, Delegate Scott.
Madam Speaker, I have introduced the floor amendment. May I speak to that amendment?
Will the clerk please report the floor amendment?
Floor amendment to Senate Joint Resolution 18, offered by Delegate Scott. Amendment 1, line 51, engrossed after legislative members, strike 4, insert 3. Second amendment, line 52, engrossed after and, strike 4, insert 5.
The delegate from Portsmouth, Delegate Scott.
Madam Speaker, as I learned on the first day here and learned again, thanks to the delegate from Caroline, that we don't build in new precedents that equate the Senate's membership to the House of Delegates membership. And because of that, I am hoping that the members will not set a new precedent by doing so and enshrining it in the Constitution, and therefore destroying that argument for all time. I'm hoping that the members will accept this amendment and vote yes on this amendment so that we may put the Senate and the House of Delegates in the proper posture proportionally. Thank you.
The delegate from Caroline, Delegate Orion.
Madam Speaker, speaking to the amendment.
Delegate Orion, you have the floor.
Ms. Speaker, Madam Speaker, I recognize the delegate is new, and I appreciate the tutelage, apparently, that I've been able to instill. However, it has always been the practice and the policy that when it comes to redistricting, each of the respective chambers control their own destinies as that has related. What the gentleman is suggesting, he knows, is a poison pill, a fatal flaw, for two reasons. One, it will keep this matter from going to the ballot because it changes it. Two, he knows it would be totally unacceptable to the Senate. It is not unprecedented, wherein when we pass legislation whereby each body will be equally affected, that equal representation is afforded. And for that reason, I would ask that we would reject the floor amendment.
The delegate from Fairfax, Delegate Simon.
Madam Speaker, speaking to the floor amendment.
Delegate Simon, you have the floor.
Madam Speaker, we just heard it. We just heard it. That's exactly what happened in 2011. In 2011, we had an effort for bipartisan redistricting that broke down, and each house decided their own destiny. And Madam Speaker, in this constitutional amendment, it's set up specifically so that each house can control its own destiny, and each party in each house can control their own destiny. That's how it's set up to work. That's the magic that makes this thing go to the Supreme Court. I hope that you will please vote yes for Delegate Scott's excellent floor amendment.
Shall Delegate Scott's floor amendment be agreed to? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? No. Chairs in doubt? Ayes and nays. Division. Shall Delegate Scott's floor amendment be agreed to? The clerk shall close the roll.